Okay, well, we're going to get started. It's noon Eastern. Welcome. I know we have people joining from across North America for sure. There may be even some other people elsewhere. So welcome. Thanks for spending an hour with me today. Today is all about you. Today is all about you and your teams. Today is about helping you to build greater trust, build greater cohesion and team well-being and greater engagement, no matter what's thrown at your team. We're in a very uncertain time right now, as we all know. And this pandemic is affecting different teams differently and different organizations differently. And it's an example of highly impactful, unexpected change, but it's also an example of the resiliency and ability of teams to tap into the very best of themselves and thrive in times of uncertainty. Or on the flip side, a crisis like this pandemic can also widen any cracks in the foundation of your team and make the team, struggle. And we want to do our best to minimize, or at the very best, eliminate as much of the struggle as possible. We believe that work isn't meant to be a challenge. A struggle. We believe that work is meant to be challenging, but it shouldn't be this daily struggle. And so today is about helping to eliminate that sense of struggle so that you and your team members can thrive and perform at your very best, regardless of what is thrown at you. And so I just want to share a little bit about us and K&Co, so you know who's sharing this information with you. So we've been helping teams to tap into the very best of themselves for over 30 years now. And we work with organizations in healthcare quite a bit. So I'll be speaking specifically to one of our healthcare team models as well today, because I know we've got a number of healthcare team folks on the webinar. We work with organizations like the Federal Reserve of Chicago. The United Nations uses one of our tools. So we work with all sorts of organizations who we either work directly with or they use our team tools. We've also, my business partner and I, who's also my mother, have authored a number of books all about helping leaders and teams to perform better. Our most recent book is Winner Instinct. And our other most recent book, Improving Healthcare Team Performance, is designed specifically for healthcare teams. And that book is actually required reading in a number of universities here in Canada and one university in the US as well. And on top of that, if you want additional insight and tips and tools, you can listen to my podcast, Leading on Purpose, and you can catch that anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. So enough about us. I just wanted to share this with you so that you know that the learning and tools and models that I'll be sharing with you today are based on over 30 years of research. They're used, the models are used by leaders around the world and have been used for over 30 years. They work. Okay, so today, like I said, is all about you and your team. You're going to be gaining strategies to strengthen communication, collaboration, and trust specifically. You're going to gain tools to help your team focus on the most important goals and priorities right now. You'll learn how to clarify expectations and help your team to focus on best practices that are most essential to the team, but maybe aren't showing up as consistently as they should be right now. That all builds cohesion. That all builds a healthy climate and a sense of community, which is really, really needed right now. And of course, all of that strengthens productivity and performance. So I'll also be introducing to you later in this webinar our e-course, and you'll be getting a whopping huge discount should you be interested in the self-paced e-course for yourself or your colleagues or your team members, which gives you gives you everything you need to lead your teams through high performance, okay? But rest assured, you're going to be getting a lot today in this webinar as well. All right, so the question that we at K&Co have been asking and answering for over 30 years now is what's the difference, right? What's the difference between teams that achieve exceptional results with ease and those that struggle to keep up? And this is the question that has driven our research, driven our work. This is our raison d'etre. This was what gets us up in the morning, to really understand those behaviors and practices that differentiate exceptional teams from the rest. And what we've found in our work is that teams that thrive consistently and create cultures not only of performance, but psychologically safe cultures along the way are those that demonstrate a core set of behaviors and practices. And so we're going to be, or I'm going to be sharing with you some of those behaviors and practices today that we know through our work and research make the biggest difference, along with strategies for you to apply them. Now, why is this important? Why is team and teamwork so important? Well, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Marcus Buckingham. If you're not, please search him, read his research. He's the foremost thinker and researcher on employee engagement. And I had an opportunity to interview him last summer, so this is pre-COVID, based on his most recent research in employee engagement. And he and his team launched the largest global study on employee engagement. To measure where engagement was at, but also to really understand what drives employee engagement at the end of the day. And so keep in mind these numbers are from pre-COVID. But last year, he found, his research team found that employee engagement in the US, let's start with the US, over the past 5 years dropped by 2%. So it not only didn't go up, it didn't stay the same, it dropped. And this was pre-COVID, it dropped by 2%. Organizations across North America, the total spent on strengthening employee engagement is $750 million a year organizations spend on strengthening engagement. That money, those strategies that money is going to, isn't working. In Canada, we moved the needle, but only by 2%. That's not enough. And I can only imagine where the engagement scores are now today after all of this unrest and shifting from in-person to remote and all of the stress and uncertainty COVID has caused. And so what this research found is that there are only 2 things that significantly drive engagement: effective teams and trust in our leaders. Those are the 2 main drivers of engagement. If we don't have those 2 things in our organizations, all the other top-down strategies, the benefits, the pay, the ping pong tables, and flex hours, all of those things will not move your engagement if you do not have effective teams and trust in leaders. So really today is about those 2 pieces, teams and trust. And through our work and research, we've identified, remember that question, what's the difference? Well, we've identified 7 practices or elements of a high performance team. And these were identified, close to, over 20 years ago. And we've tested their reliability several times since. And we know they make a difference. We also have a healthcare specific version of the 7 elements that I'm going to speak to in a minute, because I know we have a number of healthcare team folks. But I want to introduce you to these 7 elements because they will drive your team's ability to thrive no matter what is thrown at them. And we're going to focus specifically on 3 of these elements. So I'm going to touch on them at a high level. And you can get the ebook. We have an ebook that outlines each of these in detail. You can get the healthcare version at healthcareteamfitnesstool.com, and you can get the version for all other teams at teamfitnesstool.com. So healthy climate is essential regardless of the kind of team. This really measures the degree to which your team members feel psychologically safe. Do team members feel valued, respected, feel free to speak up, right? Is there a sense of trust and respect within the team? A healthy climate is the foundation of a high performance team. You and your team cannot even begin to strengthen any of the other elements unless the climate is strong. Okay? We're going to be touching on climate today. The next element is cohesiveness. And keep in mind, all of these elements are interrelated. So the strength and weakness of one, strength or weakness of one will affect the strength or weakness of another. Okay, so they're interrelated. The next element is cohesiveness, which we will also focus on today. Cohesiveness is the degree to which your team members are pulling together in the same direction towards a common goal. Everybody focused on the same goal, the same priorities. Do they value each other's roles and responsibilities, right? Demonstrating best practices, shared values, all of those good things, or are people pulling in different directions? The next element, which we'll also be touching on today, is group work skills. Group work skills, really at the end of the day, is about your meeting effectiveness. How productive are your meetings? Are your team members walking away feeling their time was well spent, feeling that time was spent on discussion and innovative thinking and sharing of ideas, or was it an information dump only? Were people engaged? Were the best decisions being made? Was there support for decisions after the meeting ended? So the way in which your team works in a meeting, whether virtual, likely these days, or otherwise, will have a direct impact on how your team goes out and works and executes against decisions and lives up to their responsibilities and contributes to the forward movement of your team. So make the most of your meetings, and we're going to be talking about that today. The other elements which we will not be diving into, but are directly affected by the strength of your top three there, is team members' contribution. This is really the engagement of your team members. Are team members being proactive? Are they looking for opportunities to share ideas and ways to move the team and the organization forward and to serve your stakeholders? Then the center one is change compatibility. Now, this session is all about helping your team to thrive in times of uncertainty and change. And the top three, the health of the top three, your healthy climate, your cohesiveness, your group work skills, will have a direct impact on your team's ability to be open and responsive to change. So we're going to be touching on that, but basically everything else that you're walking away with will directly support strengthening your team's ability to be open and responsive to change. So we're not doing a deep dive into change management, but everything around it will support your team's ability to participate and execute against and support change. Now, the other element is innovative thinking. This is the degree to which your team members are challenging the status quo. Are they looking for new and better ways of doing things? Are your team members, and I know this is challenging, can be challenging in healthcare, but are your team members open to taking risks, right? Learning from mistakes. Don't fear failure. So this looks a little bit different in healthcare, and I'll speak to that in a second because it's a different element that's measured. And then shared leadership is all shoulders to the wheel. Does everybody own the accountability for the team? Do people own the good, the bad, the ugly, the successes, the mistakes? Is it a we approach? Are team members invited to participate in decision making? Are team members invited to share ideas so as to build that accountability for the success of the team? So we're going to be focusing on the top three. Now, for healthcare, what's different is innovative thinking. Instead of innovative thinking, we're measuring shared learning, the ability to learn with and from one another in a blame-free, safe way so that people feel free to speak up, ask questions, challenge decisions, share near misses, and talk about mistakes and adverse events. Group work skills, instead of meeting effectiveness, it's about open communication and having discussions, the way in which we communicate accurately, openly, in a safe way. because we know, of course, that communication failure has a direct impact on patient safety. So the healthcare model looks different, and the questions to measure these 7 elements are different in healthcare than for everybody else, okay? Because we know healthcare teams are very unique in their needs and how they work. So I'm sharing this with you as a framework for the rest of the session, and you can get the ebook at either of those websites, okay? Now, I also want to let you know that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function, and I'll do my best to keep an eye on it and answer questions as we go forward so that this can be as interactive as possible on a webinar. All right, so let's start. Remember how I said we're not going to do a deep dive into change, but we're looking at team in the context of times of uncertainty today. And so I want to introduce you to, and you may already be familiar with this model, it's the William Bridges transition model, which shares how individuals transition through change. So when change happens, like COVID, or you're launching a change initiative, no matter how small or large that is, no matter if it's an exciting change that you're experiencing or a terrifying change that you're experiencing, individuals will always go through these 3 phases of transition as you move through the change. And it's essential as leaders to understand A, these 3 phases, and B, be able to recognize where your team members are at. Because as leaders, it's our responsibility to be able to support our team members through times of change and uncertainty. And the more we understand where they're at, the better we are able to support them. So the first phase, and we will all go through all these 3 phases, even if it's the most exciting thing to ever happen to you, you'll still start at the first phase, which is the letting go phase, okay? So letting go is probably the most painful phase. This is when we move from a current state to a future state, that requires letting go. That requires letting go of this current state. And that's uncomfortable. And that also includes losing, loss. So an example of loss could be, let's use COVID. People have had to move from in-person teams, going to work every day, that routine, that camaraderie that comes from in-person discussion, going for coffee, all of that great stuff. People have lost that. And with that loss comes a loss of community, comes a loss of camaraderie, comes a loss of routine, comes a loss of structure. And people mourned that. People struggled with that. Other types of losses, depending on the kind of change that people experience, is a loss of competency, right? So maybe I was just on a session with a healthcare client where they're doing a rollout, and I'm sure many organizations are doing this, of a new IT system, right? A new huge change to technology. And there will be a sense of loss of competence. I know how to do the paper-based version. Well, I have no idea how I'm going to use this system. And so that fear of change, of I'm an expert this way, but I'm not going to be an expert, I won't know how to do it the other way, creates a fear and a desire to hold on to the way things are. People also lose relationships when people move or there's a restructure. Loss of security, of knowing what to expect. So there are many types of losses, and there can be a tendency, given the pace of change, for us as leaders to skip over and not acknowledge what people are losing. And when we skip over that and just jump into, okay, here's the change, let's go, we will experience significantly more resistance from team members. And your team members will find themselves more stuck or take longer to move through if we do not take time to create the space for dialogue and understanding of the fears and the resistance. Okay? So understanding the loss and what people will be letting go of and acknowledging that and supporting people through that is essential. Then the next zone is the neutral zone, and this can feel very chaotic. The neutral zone, so if we were to use COVID as an example, right? Trying to learn how to use Zoom. Suddenly everybody needs to use Zoom or whatever technology you're using, right? And it can feel very chaotic. I'm now working from home, but my stuff is still at work. What's the schedule? How are we going to be meeting? What does my boss expect of me? What's my role now? Is it different? So it can be very confusing. And at the early stages of the neutral zone, right, you often have one foot in the current state or even the way it used to be, and one foot in what the future state is supposed to look like as you try new things and build your skills and try new technology, etc., and move through that change. So it can be very confusing and chaotic. The more cohesive the team is, the clearer the communication, the clearer the goal as far as what we're working towards and how we're going to get there together, the less chaotic the neutral zone will be. And we'll be moving into how to do that in a little bit. And then the final phase is, phew, all right, I'm here. You know, there's no like end, I've crossed the finish line, but it's a sense of, okay, I can do this, I get it. I'm using the new skills, I'm practicing in the new way, the change is unfolding, it's being executed, and there's a sense of almost relief when we're in this future state. Everybody goes through these three phases, okay? So if we aren't aware of how our teams are showing up, if we aren't focused on building cohesion, building a healthy climate, then we will receive a significant amount of resistance. And the goal is to help people to thrive through times of change. And so I'm going to skip over this part and just jump right into building that cohesion. The goal is to get to support people through transition. And as I said, the more cohesive the team is, the more effective your team will be at supporting each other. And so what is cohesiveness? Cohesiveness is, like I said, that pulling together in the same direction towards a common goal. Cohesiveness requires a number of things. It requires agreement and commitment to where the team is going and how the team will get there. And by how, I mean roles and responsibilities, values, best practices, and priorities. All of those need to be clear and understood by the team. And so I have a question for you. And I want you to really think about this question, then I'm going to launch a poll to see where you're at. What does success look like for your team? What does success look like for your team right now? Okay. I'm going to launch a poll. And let me know. My team and I know what success looks like for our team. Yes, absolutely, right? No, or maybe. Okay, a couple more seconds. Okay, so I'm going to end it. I'll share the results. So some of you said yes, fantastic. Some of you said no, and a good majority of you said maybe. That's often is maybe, right? So what's the risk? What's the risk in not knowing, right, what success looks like? You might have a clear idea of what success looks like for your team, but maybe your team isn't absolutely clear. And does it look different different now than it did pre-COVID, or even a couple of months ago, now that the cases are rising in a number of places? Is that affecting? What does success look like for the change you're leading, if we want to get more specific to change? But at the end of the day, it is essential to know exactly what it is you and your team are reaching for, because unless you know that, you're likely not going to get very far, or you may be going in the wrong direction. And a cohesive team, a highly engaged team, is one that understands why they're there, understands their impact that they have not only on the team, but on the larger organization. And unless we're clear on why we as a team exist and what we're striving for, it's difficult to create that meaning. And so if you are one of the leaders that said maybe or no, this is where to start. Get clear with your team on what success looks like, and I'm going to share an example of how you can go about that in a minute. The next question I have for you, and this is all measuring the degree to which your team is cohesive, okay? What are your team's top 3 priorities for achieving success? And by priorities, I don't mean tasks and projects. By priorities, I mean, is safety a priority? Is innovation a priority? Is are people and engagement a priority? Customer service a priority? Is quality a priority? So overarching priorities, not the initiatives that drive those. So do you know what those are? If you were to ask your team the same question, would their responses be aligned? So I'm curious. I'm going to launch the next poll. Stop. No. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, here we go. Poll 2. Sorry. Here's the second poll. My team and I know what our top 3 priorities are. Yes, no, maybe. Oh, good. There's a lot of yeses coming through. Oops, not even. I'll share them in a second. Okay. Okay. So, right? So it's quite tied. Yes and maybe. That's great. And just a small portion said no. So again, if you're in the no or maybe camp, then I suggest A, getting clear on what success looks like with your team, and B, asking your team, what do you think our top 3 priorities for achieving success are? And see what comes. Create a dialogue around it. Because again, the risks in not knowing, A, for yourself as a leader, is wasting time and energy on initiatives that won't lead your team towards success. And B, your team members will be pulling in different directions. It's also, especially, today, I find leaders have to have such broad shoulders. And it's very difficult for leaders to say no. We just keep getting more change initiatives, more initiatives that we just have to take on. It is far easier to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't something we can take on right now, because this won't directly lead us to this, what success looks like. But these other initiatives are more important, okay? So getting clear is essential. Now, my next question for you, are the roles and responsibilities for each team member clear, understood, and respected by all? All right, does everybody know what role they're supposed to play within the team and during times of uncertainty? Because maybe the roles have changed given this change, right? So during times of uncertainty like COVID, for example, people's roles shifted. In healthcare, for example, people were taken from one team to another. right? We're now no longer doing this job in HR. I am now going to be screening people at the hospital entrance for COVID, right? So roles change, responsibilities change. And sometimes we don't take time to pause and say, okay, how do we all work together in this new world of uncertainty? What are our responsibilities? And then finally, which behaviors and practices are most important to your team's effectiveness right now? If you were to interview me for a job today, given where your team is at, given the change is your team is facing today, and I were to ask you, what are the behaviors and practices that will help me succeed in this team and are most important to your team's effectiveness? Would you have an answer that is aligned with everybody else's answer on your team? Okay, that's what a cohesive team is. Commitment and agreement to where the team is going and how. And cohesiveness, when we are clear on those things and aligned, then we're able to adapt. Then we're able to stay focused on what's most important. And so what I'm suggesting for you is to hold a team reset meeting, especially if answers to any of those questions are unclear to you, or you feel maybe unclear to your team. Hold a team reset meeting. And a team reset meeting is just that. It's a time to bring your team together for an hour, whether virtual or in person, and reconnect on where the team is going, its purpose, and how the team is going to get there. And it's most powerful when you can start that session by acknowledging the uncertainty that your team is experiencing, by acknowledging the journey your team has been on. So again, to use COVID as an example, it's been tough. It's been more than tough, okay? And to take time and to pause as a team and to acknowledge that, to acknowledge the strengths that came through over this journey, and to give thanks and appreciation to that. That's really important, and that builds trust and engagement, which we'll be speaking to in a little bit. Then the next part of the meeting is to say, hey, let's either reconnect to our goals or let's define it depending on where you're at. If you don't have a clear, succinct definition of what success looks like for your team, then I suggest you create one with your team. And you can simply ask, okay, so if you were to define success, what would that look like? What does success look like for us? And just capture the ideas that come, and you'll have some themes that come through. Then move to, all right, if this is what success looks like, what do you think our top 3 priorities should be or are? Or you can share the top 3 priorities if they're already set and say, are these still just as important as they were 6 months ago? Are we aligned to them effectively enough? Are we fanatically focused enough on the goal and our priorities? Because in times of uncertainty and so much change and flux, it can be very easy to lose sight of our why and where we're going and the most important priorities and practices. It can be very easy to lose sight of that because we end up just putting our heads down and operating in survival mode and getting through the day, but our getting through the day may be misaligned to best practices and the most important priorities. And so the more we can reconnect to the most important things, the better we will be equipped to move through uncertainty. It might be time to clarify roles and responsibilities if you feel that they are unclear. And definitely clarify expectations and develop new team norms as far as how team members need to interact and work. What are those best practices that the team, your specific team, needs in order to thrive in the environment they're now working in? So I want to give you an example of how you can develop those team norms, and by using a tool called team agreements. Okay, so some of you may be very familiar with team agreements. Team agreements you develop with your team, and they define the behaviors and practices that your team, not you, your team identifies as most important to the team's effectiveness. Okay, so I'm going to share with you how to develop them, but basically you're asking your team to complete a sentence. In order to be, the best team possible right now, we need to do what? So you ask your team members to share their expectations and needs. How do we need to show up in order to be as effective as possible? And those behaviors and practices that your team shares is going to be different than your colleague's team or my team, right? Or every team's set of behaviors are unique to their specific needs, okay? And they evolve as time goes on. Because your set of team agreements should be reflective of behaviors and practices that are not currently showing up consistently. So let me give you an example. Here's what you present to your team. In order to be the best possible team right now, we need to do what? And you ask them to share, capture all of everybody's ideas, and come to consensus or agreement on no more than 7. These are, we've got 6 here. This was developed by another team that I work with who said I could share them. Come to agreement on the most important practices that currently aren't showing up right now, but are essential to your team's effectiveness. So this isn't a set of rules. If your team already is patient with each other, then this first agreement wouldn't be effective. Okay, these are designed to build accountability and to change behavior for the better. So this team identified that they need to be patient with each other right now and assume positive intent of each other's actions, okay, to build greater trust and openness to hearing feedback and differing ideas. They also agreed that they need to speak up more, and they'll be able to do that if they believe that people are assuming positive intent. They also identified, and these are tied together, that they need to genuinely listen to each other better in order for people to be able to speak up. People need to feel listened to in an open, genuine way. They also identified the need to wear the team hat and not individual hats. They were finding that in times of crisis or in change, team members tended to focus on what worked best for each individual versus what was in the best interest of the team, the organization, and those that they serve. The lines were also getting blurry. Everybody's, hands were in the pot. Everybody was trying to make decisions in areas that weren't their responsibility, and lines were getting blurred, and it was creating more chaos than necessary. So they identified, yes, we need to come together and brainstorm and share ideas, and let's respect also the expertise and the responsibility of each person at the table when it comes down to making a decision that falls within somebody's area of responsibility. Let's respect that. And they also decided they needed a clear objective for each meeting because their meetings were going off the track. So this developing these agreements in a reset meeting and saying, how do we need to show up differently, or what do we need to do more of in order to be an even better team? This is a really powerful exercise to let your team members know that you care, that you want to help create the most positive experience possible. This gives your team members the space to speak up and say, you know what, I think if we did this a little bit better, it would be so helpful for the rest of us. So it brings the team together, and it's your team identifying what they feel they need to change. So this is building the accountability. This is saying, hey, we're all accountable for how we show up. And so the way in which you use these agreements will have a direct effect on their effectiveness. Don't just develop them once and never refer to them again, because that will make things worse. That will create distrust and thinking, oh, we do these things and they don't go anywhere. Why bother? Team agreements work when A, they're developed by the team, when B, they describe visible behaviors, When C, they are used and updated. So a way to use these is once a month in a team meeting, check in on them. Ask, how are we doing? Ask for examples of how your team is living up to these agreements, right? Use them to create dialogue and stay focused on the team's cohesion and how we are working together through this change, through this uncertainty. Okay, and then as the team evolves and begins to develop new habits, once you start seeing, for example, people are now speaking up, right? This habit it's now part of our culture. Maybe 4 months in, you can ask, hey, should we be taking off the second agreement, speaking up? Do we feel that that's embedded in how we work now? And if so, great, celebrate that, acknowledge it, take it off of the agreements and say, okay, what can we add? What else do we need to be doing? This is your continuous improvement mechanism for how we work together. Clarifies expectations, keeps those best practices that need to be strengthened top of mind. Okay. Now, I should have told you at the beginning, I'm recording this, so I will send out, access to this video as well. Now, another way to build cohesiveness, and I'm sure you all have regular team meetings. My suggestion to you, though, is if you find that your team meetings are mostly focused on updates and maybe information, I hate to use the word dump, but so many of the meetings that I attend are just information downloads and status update. Okay, what do you have to update us on? What do you have to update us on? Okay, you're next. And they're just not creating any meaning for people, right? Or any sense of connection and community. And so the more you can shift your team meetings to include community building, a sense of calm, a sense of focus on what's most important right now, depending on your team and what they need and where they're going. The more you can connect to the how team members are feeling, whether good or not so good. And the more you can stay connected to goals and priorities at a higher level, the better your team will be equipped. There are other ways to update. When your team comes together, especially in this new virtual world, that time together is gold. So we need to make the most of it. Okay, so for some check-in ideas, a lot of the teams that I work with, we start our meetings with a one-word check-in. Okay, this is just one word where everybody goes around and shares one word that describes how they're feeling in that moment. Maybe they've just come from a meeting that was very frustrating, so maybe their word is frustrated. Or maybe somebody else is actually feeling really optimistic that day. So optimistic or energetic or tired or overwhelmed. It's an opportunity for people just to express where they're at. There is no diving into talking about why are you feeling frustrated or how can I help you feel better. It is simply an opportunity for people to express, and expressing also allows people to let go of that feeling to a degree and focus in the moment. It also communicates that you, the leader, cares about where your team members are at. So it gives you some information that you can turn into knowledge, meaningful knowledge, that if somebody is feeling down or frustrated, that you can check in a meaningful way later. Stop by if you're in person and check in and say, hey, how are you feeling? I know you weren't feeling great at the beginning of the day. Where are you at now, right? Is there anything I can do? So the more you can get a sense of where your team members are at and your team members know where each other is at, the more community you're able to build. A lot of teams are starting also with a mindfulness practice, which is, even just 30 seconds to 1 minute of mindfulness breathing to let go of stress from the previous meeting or the morning craziness if people are working from home with kids, like my morning was this morning. Then, a mindfulness practice really sets the tone and also sets the message with your team that Self-care is a priority. The more we can take care of self, the better we will be there. We'll be able to be there for one another and to manage the stress of change. Then you can also spend time on, okay, what's working really, really well? Let's celebrate what's working. What's not? What's unclear right now? So ask questions. Shift from a, telling state of sharing information to a dialogue state of asking questions and generating discussion and really getting a sense. Another idea that I find that teams are really using, especially for remote teams who are feeling disconnected from other areas of the organization, where you used to be able to walk to another department and get a sense of what was going on or just walk by them. We're feeling disconnected. So, what's the word on the street? Have you talked to anybody? Is there anything that would be interesting for us to know? Right? Team priorities, team agreements, a happy hour, celebrating something, just having fun. But changing up your team meetings helps to build that community that is so essential, especially in times of change. Okay? All right. I'm not going to go through this in detail because of time, but you're going to get this slide. Okay? So structure your meetings to ensure that your time is being well spent. The only thing I'm going to say about this right now is make sure every meeting has an objective. Even if that objective is just to get together and catch up, right? If it's an informal meeting. Ensure your meetings, people know why they're there and what you want to walk away having achieved. Okay. So to build cohesiveness, we're going to wrap up cohesiveness and move into climate and building trust. Get clear on what success looks like for the team. Identify priorities. Develop and use team agreements. These are your and your team's power tool. Honestly, they work so well when used effectively. This says check in regularly. It should be very regularly, and ensure productive team meetings. All right. Now, I wanted to let you know before we jump into climate that we have a self-paced e-course designed, one specific to healthcare and one for all other organizations, that gives you absolutely everything you need to build the cohesion, to strengthen your team meetings, and to build a healthy climate. And right now we're offering 40% off until tomorrow. So I'm going to share the link with where you can get this at the end of the session. You'll use Web40 as the code, but for example, with the team reset session, you'll get a facilitator's guide to lead that. The team agreements, you'll get your team agreement guide. Everything you need to lead meetings, including the agendas and all the tools you need to lead virtual meetings or in-person meetings. What you need to build a healthy climate, how to clarify what success looks like. All of those things are included in this course, and we're offering 40% off until tomorrow. Right now, there's a 30% off for the general population, but for you all on this webinar, we're offering 40%. Okay, I'll come back to where you can find that in a little bit. But let's get to team climate. Team climate, like I said, is the foundation of a high-performance team. Okay, without a healthy climate, you cannot begin to strengthen your team's cohesiveness, your team's group work skills, or anything like that. It's all about trust and your team members feeling that they can show up being themselves. Now, this is another stat from the Marcus Buckingham research. They found that an individual is 12 times more likely to be engaged when they trust their leader. So when trust is lacking in a team, the place to start trust building, that responsibility falls to the leader to lead that, right? The effectiveness of the team is everybody's responsibility, but when trust is lacking, It's very difficult for team members to change the culture, to build trust without the leadership of their leader to help build that. So to gain trust, you need to show trust, right? You need to give trust. And so I want to share a story with you. And it's about, some of you who know me know that this is one of my favorite stories. It's a story about a famous tightrope walker, and I've forgotten his name, so we're going to call him the famous tightrope walker. And this was years and years ago, and he was doing his most famous feat of walking across Niagara Falls. Unfortunately, the day that he chose to do this, it was a very rainy, windy, blustery day. But he decided to take a risk and do it anyway. And there were a lot of people out watching him. And he got across the falls quite safely. He made it across. And when he got to the other side, his number one fan was waiting for him. And he was jumping up and down, so excited that the tightrope walker made it across. And he said, his number one fan said, "I knew you could do it. I had every faith you could do it. Now, would you do it again? Would you go back and do it again, but this time take this wheelbarrow across with you?" And the famous tightrope walker looked at his number one fan and said, "You see that it's raining. I barely made it across. It's windy, it's blustering, and you want me to do this again with a wheelbarrow? Do you really believe I can do it?" "Oh yes, I have complete faith in you." "All right," said the tightrope walker, "get in." So you are asking your team members right now to get in a wheelbarrow with you. It's, in uncertain times, it feels windy, it feels blustery, we feel out of balance, and we feel like we're walking across a tightrope. And in uncertain times, you're asking your team members to get into a wheelbarrow with you and walk through along this journey with you without knowing exactly what to expect at the end of the day, right? Or what's going to come. And so in order for your team members to get into your wheelbarrow with you, they need to trust you, right? And trust comes, like I said, when we show trust to others. So empowering others, giving people the autonomy to do their work. You know, I have leaders that I coach early on in COVID when people were moving to remote working, where there was a panic. You know, how do I know my team members are actually doing their work? How do I know that the work is getting done? I need to be checking on them all the time. And so my question back, and that was a natural fear because this was a big change, right? And so my question to leaders had always been then, you know, did you trust, we'll call her, did you trust Sarah when she was in the office to do her work? Well, yeah, of course. So what's different now? Why don't you trust her now? Is it a lack of trust, or is this your fear? Let's give people the autonomy and empowerment to do their work. Just because they're in a different situation doesn't mean that their work ethic is changing. They might need different supports. So instead of worrying and micromanaging, it's about asking, what do you need to be your best right now? Do you have the tools you need? What kind of support do you need? Show them that you care, right? Engage people in more decision-making and problem solving. Use your team meetings to do that. And then be vulnerable and transparent. Now is a time where team members need their leaders to be more vulnerable, to express and share their thinking, where they're at, how they're doing. Okay, so participate in those one-word check-ins, participate in the mindfulness, right? And vulnerability can also come from showing that you care by reaching out and just asking how people are doing without worrying what will come from that question or thinking that we need to fix everything for people. Helping people through transition and through the loss and the chaos of the transition is about creating space for people to share how they're feeling, just to be heard and to know that people care about how they're feeling. Seek opportunities to show you care. So we build trust in 3 ways, 4 ways actually. We build trust when we show that we know what we're doing, when we achieve results. We build trust when we lead with integrity, when we act with integrity, where we do what we say we're going to do, we walk the talk. And 3, actually it's 3 ways, we build trust when we show we care. Caring is the most important piece of building trust and is most linked to engagement. When I believe my leader cares about me and my well-being and my work, I am 12 times more likely to be engaged. So how do you go about doing that? I suggest that we talked about team meetings, use your one-on-one meetings. Use your one-on-one meetings to create meaningful dialogue around understanding what your team members need, what's working, how are they feeling this week, what do they need this week, what are they celebrating this week, what are they focused on this week, what do they think the team needs to do better or differently, even asking them for feedback on what do they need from you. Use the time you have with your team members in a meaningful way. That builds trust, that builds community, and that builds cohesion so that you can work through uncertainty together. And then in the course, you have everything you need to have those conversations. What do your one-on-ones look like? How can you build trust if it's lacking? Okay. So we went through the healthy climate, cohesiveness, and a little bit of group work skills in less than an hour. You're walking away with the importance of having a reset meeting, the importance of getting clear on what success looks like and identifying your top 3 priorities. If those are unclear, start right there. Start with building greater cohesiveness at your very next meeting. If you need to strengthen your climate, ask yourself, what do I need to do differently to create greater trust? What's getting in our way? And then finally, are your meetings working effectively? Can you shift them in any way? Can you create more dialogue and less data dump? And then remember, you have everything you need to do all of those things in this